Hey guys, and welcome. I'm not driving for those of you that have that thing. I'm actually parked looking at a golf course, but I have some thoughts that I wanted to share, so I thought I'd capture it real quick. I want to have a quick conversation about disassociation, disconnection. When we talk about trauma, a lot of times what we're talking about, and a really great metaphor, if you haven't seen it yet, is watch the video on the Impala and the Leopard. Because one of the things that happens in that particular video is we discuss how once the Impala has been captured, even though it hasn't been killed yet, it has a trauma. So it's basically going into shock, and there's a disconnect from its central nervous system, and parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, a lot of the shifts and changes that are going on there, everything kind of shuts down. The breathing is almost imperceptible. You can't even tell that it's breathing, and for all intents and purposes it looks dead. And so that disconnection it's like a gift from Mother Nature that says, hey, you don't have to feel things the way you do. In fact, in a lot of those situations, there's actually some hormones that are released, oxytocin, to where, in that story, the Impala can kind of, get rid of it can surrender its spirit. So we want to talk about the different scenarios in human beings where that can occur. And in my career, I've had it occur in some really interesting scenarios, but they seem to be pretty common. There's three major categories of what I've been exposed to clients. One is in religious trauma syndrome, and this is where there's such an extremism, a fundamentalist religious aspect that says you shouldn't pay attention to your body's evil, your body's wrong, something along those lines, to where it's encouraged and even maybe forced or conditioned to not listen to the signals from your body. And so what we want to somebody's starting a car right next to me. What we want to just acknowledge is that we don't have to pay attention to the somatic information that's coming from our body. Especially as human beings, we have this advanced imagination and an advanced memory and an advanced processing system that we can come up with all different aspects and reasons why we can disconnect from feeling the pain within us, because we don't know what to do with the pain, so we disconnect from it so we don't have to suffer from it. I mean, that's why you take a benzodiazepine for anxiety, is so that you can shut off the signal that's telling you what's actually going on inside your body. So more on that in processing anxiety. But so that's one. Another one is when people have gone through, a lot of different variations of mental, emotional, or physical trauma. Again, having a disconnect that we simply haven't connected back to the body. We've upregulated into some form of fight, flight, freeze, and in this case, disconnection, and we haven't completed that cycle of trauma, so we're still disconnected because it works. We don't have to feel the pain. But what that's also doing is that's frequently keeping us disconnected from the flow of life as well. So even though it's designed to protect us, it's protecting us in a way that's not connecting us to the flow of life that we would actually want to create. And you're going to see that play out in all different types of behavior patterns, codependent relationships. There's a lot of patterns that are pretty easy to predict there. The third way is, and this is really common with educated individuals. I get a lot of doctors as clients, and I have to admit that, generally I spend at least one session, if not two or more, sometimes just cognitively wrestling them in order to prove to them that I'm at least maybe 75% as smart as they are. And so my biggest challenge there is to cognitively wrestle them enough to get them out of the thinking and to get them processing into the body. Somatic processing is absolutely the way that they need to go. And we want to think of that as these different realms of experiencing reality. All right, cognitive is one realm. Emotion is another realm, and sensation is a completely different realm. And so these three different kind of areas, we're talking about top-down processing is thinking, right? We have a thought. It creates a neurotransmitter, goes to the hypothalamus, where it creates a neuropeptide, released through the pituitary gland, travels through the autonomic nervous system, the HPA, where it goes to a plexus of nerves, normally a hormonal center of some sort, where it broadcasts a signal that we know as an emotion, right? Thought creates the feeling inside. So there's a feeling, there's a felt sense in the body, and this is where you're going to hear me talk about over and over again, the felt sense. Well, if you use your intellect to disconnect from your body, well, then you're in your head, you're not in your heart. You're in your head, you're in cognitive, you're not in sensation. So we have to look at this as an opportunity. We have to connect back. Well, why would you want to connect if that's where the pain is? So if there's trauma that's not been processed, and it doesn't have to be like physical trauma, it can be emotional trauma. And the real complex part here that works for a lot of people is often that trauma is something that might have been either experienced or it might have been modeled trauma. Like what we see in children of Holocaust survivors are prone to PTSD and anxiety, not because they went through the same traumas. Obviously, they didn't live through the same things, but because they were modeled the triggers. And so in this way, these types of upregulation of fight, flight, freeze, disconnection on a multitude of human behaviors get modeled by parents. We absorb them within that theta brainwave, theta heavy brainwave activity that happens between the ages of 2 and 7. And then we get puberty, like right after that, right? So there's often things that get established in our subconscious felt sense of identity in childhood. Then it gets layered with other scenarios where we're attracting different situations that are kind of designed to heal that. Like for example, if you go through some form of emotional abandonment, and this is really, really common in the US with the way that our society works, then you are going to absolutely attract relationships where you're going to go through some interpreted, perceived aspect of emotional abandonment. But only always. Like that's coming for you. If you don't know that's coming for you, then you're not ready for it, and you don't know how to use that pain as a guide to show you how to heal what's actually there. So these are 3 completely different scenarios here. One being people that suffer the most are often the most intelligent because they're so good at arguing with themselves. My job is to show them how to get out of the head and into the body. And this is where mindfulness, body scanning can be really, really helpful because the brain does what the brain expects to do. The neurons that fire together, wire together. Simple conditioning like doing body scan meditations are literally physically increasing neuropeptide flow of communication between the brain and the body so that we can what? So that we can feel more. We can feel more. There's been several situations where I've had somebody that's come to me because they had their heart broken in a relationship, and suddenly they're feeling pain that they've never felt because they're going up above their threshold of what they've normally kept it at. Honestly, it's one of the best things that could have happened to them because that pain is now breaking their heart open. That's a metaphor, guys, but it means that it's upregulating their system in such a way with meaning and purpose that something means enough to them that they're actually feeling it now, where before they've stayed underneath the threshold. That is a really valuable relationship. Anything that makes you hurt that much, it's because now you're not using the same coping mechanisms, external coping mechanisms, of avoidance and projection. Now you've got to go inside and feel what you absolutely need to feel. And most of the time, it's one of the most amazing experiences that can happen for people. So these are 3 common disassociation reasons, although there are certainly many more that are out there. Physical pain is another one as well, where we've just been in physical pain for too long from an injury that we then learn how to disconnect. But then that can have an effect on how we work with our emotions and how we show up in behaviors and relationships. Okay, so this is the section about disconnection and disassociation. I hope it was educational. I hope it encourages you saying, wow, man, maybe I have that, right? And let's look at these other videos and go, well, what do I do about that? What's the journey? What are the tools? What are the mechanisms? How can I? And I absolutely want to encourage you that we have the tools that can melt everything that's in our way, from flow, where it takes no effort for us to be us, and to have an energy-rich life. Take care, guys.